Hey everybody, this is video number 2 of NAD Plus, where we will specifically talk about how NAD Plus stimulates your energy production. I'm Dr. Philip Oob, a functional medicine doctor here in Austin, Texas, and we're going to talk about how NAD Plus stimulates your energy production. Now, one of the things that can get really complicated with NAD Plus and energy production is I just take many biochemical classes in order to fully understand how NAD Plus and NADH, all that works. I want to boil it down really simple for you, and so I'm going to give you a metaphor. I love metaphors because I'm a simple person. Metaphors help me understand more things, and then I'll get into more of the complicated version if you want to know. Otherwise, you can just kind of skim forward and look at my other videos in this series. So once again, this is the video 2 out of 5. And how does NAD Plus stimulate energy production? Now, one of the things that's a little confusing is NAD Plus exists with NADH. Both are needed in order to make energy. So when I was a young kid, I went fishing with my dad all the time, and I had to prime the pump before we could fire up the engine. I don't know if we do this anymore, and modern engines are probably better at it than this these days. But the idea was you had to pump some fuel into the engine in order for the engine to start. But if you're a young kid and over pump because you get excited about pumping fuel and fishing, then you end up flooding the engine. So the interesting part is if there's not enough fuel in the engine, there's nothing to ignite. If there's too much fuel in the engine, then there's not enough air for it to ignite and use oxygen as the combustion with the fuel. So the important part of this is that you need a balanced version of gasoline and air. So the same idea exists with NAD Plus and NADH. If you learn nothing else from this presentation, the main thing I want you to take home is that NAD Plus is necessary for energy production, but NADH is also used. It's not the devil. There's too much focus on NAD Plus, and poor NADH is not getting any love. Both are necessary. So the chemical structure, not that you really care, but the chemical structure, all it is this little hydrogen ion. That one little hydrogen ion, this NADH is supposed to carry the energy and then donate the energy, and then it's supposed to drop down to NAD+, go grab more energy and shuttle back and forth. NAD+ has its uses, NADH has its uses, and it's supposed to exist in both forms. I love metaphors. So this is another metaphor I tried to come up with. If your house were on fire and you had firefighters show up with buckets of water, first of all, you'd be in trouble. But anyway, in this metaphor, the idea is that if you had firefighters trying to put out a house fire with buckets of water and you had this large bin of water, the idea is the firefighters would take an empty bag, fill it with water, and then that water bucket would go to the house, and after it's dumped on the fire, then it would come back as an empty bag and then filled again. This is the idea behind why NAD Plus is useful just as well as NADH. If you did not have empty buckets, NAD Plus, then you couldn't fill them, and then it's NADH. So both of these are necessary. Okay, that's what all that's saying also. So this is the complicated diagram of where NAD Plus actually exists in what's called our Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. All you need to know with this is that inside of every single cell of your body has to manufacture its own energy. Every cell has a component or an organelle, a tiny little organ inside of a cell called a mitochondria. Some cells have hundreds, some cells have only a few, depends on the metabolic activity. Inside that little mitochondria that's making energy, this cycle is happening. This is basically food that comes down as a chemical or a molecule, and as that molecule gets processed into different molecules, it releases energy. The energy then needs to be soaked up by our own proteins and molecules in order to be converted into actual energy that's usable. You don't eat a cheeseburger and just magically create energy out of it. This is the process where it is. If you notice all these little blue arrows around, if you could zoom in, and we won't because it's not important, that's where all of the NAD Plus enters the cycle, grabs energy out of that chemical reaction, and then escorts it elsewhere to make energy in the form of ATP. Our cells rely on ATP, not these chemicals and molecules. So our body's trying to make ATP using these molecules, and it uses NAD Plus to shuttle that energy. This is getting even more complicated. So after the NADH is generated from those molecules, the NADH then drops off hydrogen molecules, or atoms, hydrogen atoms still inside your mitochondria. After it's dropping off those hydrogen ions, it makes a gradient that churns a pump that makes ATP. All more complicated than you need to know, but suffice it to say that NAD Plus is needed in order to give it hydrogen ions, in order to dump it into the mitochondria, in order to generate ATP, your actual cellular energy. This is the same diagram shown a different way. Here's my title of NADH and NAD+. If you notice, the NADH is coming in and dropping off these hydrogen ions. When it drops off that hydrogen ion, it becomes an NAD+ again. Okay, why is that important? This is how your cells make energy, or mitochondria make energy. And the other fascinating part that you may not know is that NAD+ carrying a hydrogen ion, if you take two of those, that's two hydrogens, you breathe oxygen, and that NADH, the two of them, with the oxygen, combine to make water. So NAD+ and water. This is how your cells make energy. This is why you breathe oxygen. You use these hydrogen ions to generate energy. Once they're used, you use oxygen to grab onto them and escort them out of the body. That's water. So here's the green arrows pointing to where the hydrogen ions are. There's the oxygen ion, and there's your water ion, just to prove that I am in fact right. And there's the chemical reaction showing in blue where the hydrogen ions marry the oxygen and then become water. So why does this matter? That's the important part, right? So if the mitochondria are broken, the basic idea is that the NADH can't drop off its hydrogen ion, and so it stays as NADH. So basically what I'm showing here is that the NADH is supposed to drop off its hydrogen ion. After it drops it off, it's supposed to turn into NAD+. This broken bar is showing that you produced NADH, but it's got nowhere to go, so the NADH levels climb, and as NADH levels climb, you're still burning NAD+, you're still adding hydrogen ions to NAD+, but they have nowhere to go, and they're not being produced from being dropped off. So as NAD+ levels drop, your DNA repair goes down, your anti-aging hormones go down, your immune system goes down, and basically you age and die. Not fun. So just to remind you, NADH is buckets of water, NAD+ is empty buckets. If you want to put out that fire, you need a constant stream of both. So the moral of the story is, if you learn nothing, all you need to know is that NAD+ equals energy for humans. And here's your athletes just to show that they make energy, okay? The next video in this series is going to be NAD+ makes you younger. I mean, what a miracle molecule, right? It gives you more energy and makes you younger and repairs your DNA. This is awesome. So stay tuned, subscribe to my channel, like my video, comment, and check out my next video in this series. See you next time.